The fourth installment in the Bad Boys franchise is now in cinemas. Bad Boys Ride or Die. So we thought it would be a great time to do Ask Us Anything, Bad Boys / Michael Bay edition. And our first question from @Daphne M88. It's a pretty straightforward one, but I think one that many will have, given that the first Bad Boys movie came out such a long time ago. Daphne asks, I've never watched a single Bad Boys movie. Should I?
The answer is yes. Next question. But no, in all seriousness, I think if you're a fan of cinema and you know who Michael Bay is and you know what a Michael Bay movie entails, i.e. Bayhem, i.e. maybe slightly cheesy, whatever, it's always interesting to watch the director's first movie. I think with a lot of filmmakers, you can almost see growth in their film language, their cinematic language. But with Michael Bay and Bad Boys, you see that it's all complete. The Bayhem is ready to go. He just needed the money to make his first movie. And that is an interesting thing to see when you're talking about a big budget actioner.
Also, I would add that unlike a lot of other studio efforts, and when I say studio efforts, I mean studios are always looking at old franchises which they can requel or reboot or just keep making over and over again until audiences get tired and fed up. And unlike other studio efforts, all 4 of the Bad Boys movies have been pretty decent. Like, we've seen the drop-off in quality in the Fast and Furious movies, and not just in how ridiculous they've gotten, but just how pointless they've become. And I think what's interesting about the Bad Boys franchise is that there is still a lot of sincerity to it. And I think that was my biggest takeaway from watching Bad Boys Ride or Die as well, is that Martin Lawrence and Will Smith and their supporting cast, there's a real sincerity when they talk about family. It doesn't feel like a joke. It doesn't feel like, oh, how many times are they going to say the word in the trailer? And I appreciate that. And I think the studio and the filmmakers have done well in maintaining a certain level of quality. So, yes, I agree with Bahir. It's important on a cinematic, artistic level, but also these movies haven't necessarily let me down yet. They've been a lot of fun. If what you're looking for is like some mindless action with a bit of heart, then this one is not going to let you down.
Jumperjacks86 asks, do you have a favorite Bad Boys movie and why?
I have one.
Okay.
And it's not the first Bad Boys. I love the first Bad Boys. I think it's really good. But I really like Bad Boys 2.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Bad Boys 2 is a really interesting film because, as I've already said, the first Bad Boys was Michael Bay's first film. But then when he gets to Bad Boys 2, which was released 8 years later, after he had done The Rock, after he had done Armageddon, after he had done Pearl Harbor, you can really see him amp up the Bayhemness.
Also because it feels like by the time he got to Bad Boys 2, he was already Michael Bay.
Capital M, capital B, Michael Bay.
And so what that means is they gave him a lot more money to play with, and I think a lot less oversight.
Bad Boys 2 really sort of opened up the scope of the Bad Boys franchise, right?
Because at that point, Michael Bay was already leaning into his own hype. That by the time he got to The Island, for example, it was The Island, right, with Ewan McGregor, you could tell that he knew that he was the only director in Hollywood making these sorts of movies. A long time ago, I interviewed the guy who invented the Red Cam. And of course, the Red Cam was the first 4K HD camera which you could hold in your hand, right? Because before that, these things were big and expensive. And the Red Cam, I think, came in at $10,000 or something, which was nothing. It was super cheap. And apparently the first question Michael Bay asked him was, how much do these cost? That's great. I'm going to blow them up.
Yeah.
Because he could now have these high definition cameras in his cars while he would crash them into one another. And so he was the only one doing that sort of thing.
With Bad Boys 2, you really get to see that international men of mystery, right? There's a big conspiracy. They have to leave American shores. They're going unprotected by the American government. There's that tactical narcotics team that have to sort of go and support him as he breaks into Cuba. It's a lot bigger. The chases are a lot bigger. The story was a lot bigger. Bad Boys 2 definitely feels the more polished of the two Michael Bay Bad Boys films.
All right, we have a Michael Bay question from @LegoFan in PJ. Please explain the significance of Michael Bay's 1993 Got Milk commercial Aaron Burr for those of us who are not into American pop culture deep cuts. Do you remember this ad, Bahir?
Of course I remember this ad.
Right, so this was the first Got Milk ad. And it was part of a massive campaign by the milk people in America to get Americans to drink more milk. Now, I'm sure you've seen the print ads where famous people have a milk mustache, but there were also a series of TV commercials, and this was the very first one. And essentially, it features, for those of you who haven't seen it, you can look it up on YouTube. It features a guy sitting in what looks like a library or a museum, and he's obsessed with history.
Specifically Aaron Burr.
And Hamilton. And as the camera pans around the room, you see all of these artifacts. There's a radio playing, and the radio guy is like, oh, we're going to call up, and the next person who can answer this historical question will win $10,000. The guy sitting in the room, however, is having a big fat peanut butter sandwich. And his mouth is all sticky from the peanut butter when the phone rings. And he answers the phone, and the question is, who killed Alexander Hamilton? The camera flashes to, like, the actual guns that were used in the duel. And he can't get the words Aaron Burr out without muffling them. He's like, Aaron Burr. And then he's like, oh, wait, let me get some milk. But there's like barely like half a teaspoon of milk left. And oh my God, he has no milk, and he can't clean his mouth, and he can't say the words Aaron Burr, and he loses $10,000. And then on a black screen, the words pop up, got milk. Essentially, they did this campaign of ads. The first one was directed by Michael Bay, but they did this campaign of ads that essentially kind of showed you all of these situations where milk would come in really handy, but you don't have any.
Go on IMDb, look up Michael Bay's other works. He's done a bunch of really great ads and great music videos as well. I think the one thing that, if you didn't know Michael Bay did ads, I think if you were to go back and watch the Aaron Burr ad, you will realize that it's got all the hallmarks of a Michael Bay thing.
All of them. The way the camera moves, the fact that this guy is spreading peanut butter on bread using what looks like a giant sword.
Yeah.
It's not even a butter knife.
That, but also the way that is shot, right? The camera is really fucking dramatic and tight. There's really sort of harsh lighting. It's all Michael Bay.
Like he's eating the sandwich the way people eat hot dogs at all-you-can-eat hot dog championships, right? He's like slowly stuffing it in his mouth.
I think the significance of that ad is that ad really launched 1,000 ships with regards to the got milk thing. I think that was the perfect ad for the time.
But also, when you're watching that ad, I think one thing to remember is right now, in our modern pop culture consciousness, Aaron Burr and Hamilton are household names because of the musical Hamilton. But I think there were a lot of Americans back then, even if they had done social studies, didn't know that Aaron Burr shot Hamilton in a duel. And I think that small moment in history was highlighted in an incredible way in this, 30, 60-second ad.
Yeah, just a random ad for milk.
So I think the ad actually did a lot of heavy lifting with regards to a lot of things. Promoting milk, getting the awareness out of who Aaron Burr actually was, and getting that Michael Bay style out into the public consciousness. Like the actor who plays the character in the ad, Whelan, I can't remember his first name, but you would have seen his face. Like you see his face, and he's in a lot of movies, but he's always a side character or a secondary actor. But during that period, he was one of the most popular faces in America because everyone was talking about that ad.
Also look up his music videos. If you're of a certain age, you will know the song Shy Guy by Diana King. It's just like really New York black and white music video that was shot by Michael Bay.
It was also the theme song for the first Bad Boys.
It was also the theme song for the first Bad Boys. That's right. And if you go through IMDb and you look through Michael Bay's other works, you can absolutely see that it was directed by Michael Bay. His style is completely there. His style is completely obvious. He's not hiding anything, and he takes it straight from the ad world / music video world into his filmmaking.
Yeah, absolutely.
At Rabbit Hop asks, if the bad boys are coming to get you, what will you do to defend yourself? I will just lie down in a ball and just wait for them to come get me. Because you can't get away. You can't, right? You just sort of sit down, have a peanut butter sandwich with some milk, and just wait for it to happen.
I agree. I've seen these movies. There is no stopping them. It is pure, complete, utter chaos. They have no qualms about destroying whole entire cities.
Yeah.
So why even bother trying to defend yourself?
Help everybody by just sitting down.
What do you want? If I've done something wrong, just take me the fuck away.
Maybe you'll get a couple of laughs out of their quips and then just go to jail.
We've got a question from Monesh who asks, should Bad Boys look to have an end for their franchise or risk becoming the next Fast and Furious?
Look, Monesh, I don't think anybody can become the next Fast and Furious. I think the next Fast and Furious is the next Fast and Furious.
Correct.
But I agree with you, Monish. I think the Bad Boys franchise needs to have an end. I think just based on the two actors' ages, there's a very high chance that they're kind of getting too old to be running around and firing guns as they jump through windows and stuff. And I would like to see an end. I think I would like to see a movie where it is written in where these two guys just retire or ride out into the sunset in a Ferrari or whatever and just end it. I think I don't want to just drop it and forget it. I'd like to see them actually retire in their world.
Bad Boys, The Last Dance.
Yeah, Bad Boys, The Retirement Home, something.
Bad Boys, The Last Waltz.
Ooh, I like that one.
I mean, I am the worst person to ask a question like this because when I am a fan of something, I want more of it. And especially when it's doing well. Like, these 4 movies have been a lot of fun and still doing well. And so I'm like, oh, why not another one? We could use another one.
But, Martin Lawrence can't run anymore.
I know. It's like Star Wars, though. Whenever Star Wars is doing well, I'm always like, ooh, give me more Star Wars. And then when shit comes out, I'm like, oh, maybe it's time for Star Wars to stop for a while.
Yeah, but the problem with Bad Boys is the movies are so much about Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. I don't want to see them hand off the mantle to someone else.
Did you ever see the TV spin-off?
What?
There was a TV spin-off with Gabriel Union's character from Bad Boys 2 called LA's Finest, which ran for 2 seasons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I did not know this.
It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't Bad Boys.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Bahir. I think they are getting on, even though Will Smith doesn't show it. He still looks incredibly well and does a lot of cool things for a man his age. Martin Lawrence does look a little more tired, but maybe that's why they kind of wove that into the story of this movie.
Yeah.
By giving him a heart attack within the first 5 minutes of the film. I think I would like one more. And then they can stop. And also, I think, unlike Fast and the Furious, these movies feel like they're a lot more physical because they're not just sitting behind the wheel of a car. They're engaging in gunfights, they're running down highways, they're doing stuff, right? But I think one more they can possibly pull off if it isn't too long a gap between 4 and 5.
If they do one more, and if it is the final one, I want to see Michael Bay back in the director's chair.
Oh, yes, please.
I want to see Michael Bay back in the director's chair, bring back Gabriel Union, and just blow Miami up. I want to see that. Yeah. Suen asks, do you think Bad Boys for Life and Bad Boys Ride or Die, which aren't directed by Michael Bay, still retains the same feelings or vibes as the first 2? I think it is clear that it wasn't directed by Michael Bay, but that's not necessarily an entirely bad thing.
I think Adil and Bilal, when they took over and they did Bad Boys for Life, it felt fresh. It still had that Michael Bay vibe. It wasn't exactly like what he would do, but I think they brought a freshness to the franchise, which really helped because Bad Boys for Life did very well. It got a lot of critical acclaim. It made a lot of money, which is why the sequel happened. And I think Sony seems to be doing this thing as well, where they seem to make movies that top out at a budget of 100 million. And I think that's quite smart for a big budget Hollywood movie to top out at that, because then there is a chance that you can recoup your cost from the global box office. So you're not going 150, you're not going 200 where it becomes prohibitive to make any money at all. And so I think if they keep the budget small, and I think if they keep making these sorts of films, then I think you don't need Michael Bay. I know you said just now you like to see Michael Bay come back, but I don't think you need Michael Bay to make it work. And if Adil and Bilal have showed us anything, these last two movies do work without him. He's still an executive producer, but that usually doesn't mean that you have day-to-day oversight over what's happening in the movie. Let me put it this way. It's got enough of a feeling that is recognizable.
Yep, agreed.
Our last question is from Adele XADR. She asks, Bad Boys only got a 64% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and Bad Boys 2 is at 24%. Why do you think they weren't as well received when they were released, and what makes them better in hindsight? That is a very good question.
Can I just quickly read out the top 10 films of 1995 when the first Bad Boys was released?
Please.
First place, Die Hard with a Vengeance. Second, Toy Story. Third place, Apollo 13. Fourth place, GoldenEye. Fifth place, Pocahontas. Sixth place, Batman Forever. Seventh place, Seven. Eighth place, Casper. Ninth place, Waterworld. 10th place, Jumanji.
Can I just say something very quick?
Yeah.
There are only 2 franchise movies on that list.
Yes.
Wow.
What a time to be alive.
8 out of the 10 movies in the top 10 of 1995 were original films.
Yeah, what a time to be alive. But I think also that shows you what were the kind of films that were out at the time. I don't think America was ready for Michael Bay to make that step into a Michael Bay cinematic feature, which was what Bad Boys was. 64% isn't terrible. And you have to, again, think about what were the other films that were released at the time. So in context, you can probably guess why it wasn't as well received as other films. Yes, it doesn't have the most challenging story. Sure, it's not as well written as something like Apollo 13, but that doesn't matter, I think, in hindsight.
But also, if you look at Bad Boys 2 being at 24%, even the first Bad Boys being at 64%, 1995 was also a very different critical space in that there weren't as many voices who were film critics at the time doing this sort of thing. And so therefore, you would get a very narrow point of view. And this is a movie by a former music video director starring 2 black rap stars / comedians in an action buddy comedy.
Yeah.
And I can see how that would be met with a certain uppity reaction. Then, by the time Bad Boys 2 came out, it was looked upon as pure self-indulgence at the time. And I think that's why it got that 24% rating, because it was just escalation from the first movie, which was relatively intimate, set in Miami, among these drug runners, etc. But then Bad Boys 2, they tear up all of Miami, they go to Cuba and tear up all of Havana, and it's just extreme action, right? And I can see how some critics would be like, this is pure overindulgence. As for looking back on it on hindsight, I think it performs better, and I think it's received better, because only in hindsight can we see how those movies have influenced all of the action movies that have come after. Because movie directors have seen it, actors have seen it, and I think it's inspired them in different ways because they've learned different techniques from what Michael Bay does. They've liked his stylistic choices. And I think a lot of other movies that we've seen that have come after have been greatly influenced by those 2 films, or his body of work in particular.
Yeah, I think his body of work has been influential. Any action film director who says it hasn't is pretty much lying to themselves. It has been influential for audiences as well, right? I think that's what we're seeing now. And for better or for worse, we're seeing a lot more of these, or we were seeing a lot more of the Michael Bay, Bayhem style action adventure films when we probably didn't want anybody else but Michael Bay to do them.
I don't know if they've become better in hindsight. I think they still are what they are. I think we possibly have changed as an audience. And I think that's true of any movies that we look back on and we go, oh, well, that was kind of sucky when it came out, but I seem to like it a lot more now. I think our circumstances change as film critics, as viewers, as members of the audience. I think we take away different things, and maybe looking back on Bad Boys 1 and 2 in 2024, given everything that we've seen since and how the action movie genre has evolved since, we probably look at it with completely different eyes right now.
We probably look at it from the point of view of this is just fun. We don't have to take it anything more than that. We don't have to break it down from an academic standpoint. We don't have to talk about what it means, what lessons it teaches you about police officers and all that stuff. It's just a romp. It's a cartoon. Let's let it be done.
Yeah.
Can I give you a piece of trivia that I just learned?
Shoot, go for it.
Michael Bay's cousin is Susan Bay,
Okay.
was married to Leonard Nimoy.
No way.
Yeah. Leonard Nimoy then became the voice actor for Sentinel Prime in Transformers Dark of the Moon.
Very cool.
Michael Bay is related to Spock, dude.
That blows my mind. That makes me love him even more. Even more. Well, on that note, thank you so much for all of your questions, and thank you for contributing to another exciting episode of Ask Us Anything, Bad Boys Edition. Go check out Bad Boys Ride or Die. It's now showing in Malaysian cinemas. Let us know what you think. Also, keep those questions coming in for Ask Us Anything. You know how to reach out. Goggler MY, all of our social media feeds. You can also email us on podcast@goggler.my or send us a WhatsApp on the Goggler hotline 012-524-5208. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Goggler Podcast.